The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the quiet suburban street as Liam, an eager but slightly wobbly 8-year-old, braced himself for another attempt. His bright blue bicycle, a recent birthday gift, gleamed invitingly, yet it also seemed to mock him with its 2 wheels and the terrifying prospect of balancing on them. Beside him, his mom, Olivia, offered a comforting smile, her presence a steady anchor in his sea of apprehension. "You've got this, buddy," she encouraged, her voice soft but firm. "Just pedal, and I'll be right here." Liam nodded, a determined glint in his eyes. He mounted the bike, his small hands gripping the handlebars tightly. Olivia positioned herself behind him, her hands gently but firmly holding the back of the seat. With a deep breath, Liam pushed off. The first few strides were always the hardest. The bike wobbled precariously, threatening to topple over at any moment. Olivia, with a surprising agility for someone who had just worked a full day, jogged alongside him, her stride perfectly matching his uneven progress. Her hands, calloused from years of gardening, and now, apparently, bike holding, were his only connection to stability. "Keep pedaling! Look straight ahead!" she instructed, her breath coming in short puffs. They continued like this for what felt like an eternity. Liam's legs pumped furiously, his little heart thudding in his chest. He'd manage a few feet, sometimes even a yard, before the inevitable wobble would turn into a full-blown tilt, and he'd have to put his feet down, narrowly avoiding a fall. Each time, Olivia would be there, her hands steadying the bike, her smile unwavering. There were tumbles, of course, small, harmless ones where Liam would just awkwardly dismount and Olivia would catch the bike before it clattered to the ground. And then there were the more dramatic ones, where Liam, losing all balance, would go down, taking Olivia with him. They'd both end up on the soft grass verge, laughing, dust and bits of grass clinging to their clothes. Olivia's knees bore the faint testament of these shared mishaps, small scrapes adding to the story of their afternoon adventures. One particularly frustrating afternoon, after what felt like the 100th near fall, Liam's spirits began to flag. "I can't do it, Mom," he mumbled, a tear threatening to escape. "It's too hard." Olivia knelt beside him, her face serious. "Liam, remember when you learned to walk? Did you give up after the first fall?" He shook his head. "Exactly, and you're not going to give up on this either. You're strong and you're persistent. I know you can do it. And I'm not going to stop helping you until you do." Her words, filled with such unwavering belief, reignited a spark in Liam. He looked at her, at the faint smudges of dirt on her cheek, at the determined glint in her eyes, and knew she truly meant it. Days turned into a week, each afternoon a repetition of the same ritual. Olivia, abandoning her usual post-work unwinding, dedicated herself entirely to Liam's quest. Her hands were a constant presence, sometimes firm, sometimes barely touching, a silent guide in his journey towards independence. She learned to anticipate his wobbles, to provide just the right amount of support without completely taking over. Then, one sun-drenched Saturday, something shifted. They were on the quietest street in the neighborhood, the air still and warm. Liam pushed off, and Olivia, as always, was there. He pedaled, a little stronger, a little more confident. The bike wavered, but he corrected it. He looked ahead, focusing on a distant lamppost. Olivia, sensing a change, slowly, almost imperceptibly, loosened her grip. Her hands hovered inches from the seat, ready to intervene, but not quite touching. Liam, engrossed in his task, didn't notice. He was moving, truly moving under his own power. A few more yards. The lamppost seemed to shrink as he approached it. He pedaled faster, a triumphant grin spreading across his face. Olivia, a few paces behind him, felt a surge of pure elation. She watched, her heart pounding, as her son, completely unaware, continued to ride, a small, independent figure against the backdrop of the setting sun. When you finally reached the end of the block and brought the bike to a wobbly stop, he turned, his eyes wide with disbelief and joy. "Mom, I did it! I rode!" Olivia, tears brimming in her eyes, rushed forward. She didn't embrace him immediately, instead letting him bask in the glory of his achievement. "You did, Liam! You absolutely did!" she cheered, her voice cracking with emotion. Her beaming smile mirrored his own, a radiant reflection of shared triumph. She pulled him into a tight hug. Her calloused hands, those hands that had held him steady through every wobble and fall, now wrapped around him, a small, tangible reminder of her unwavering support. The scrapes on her knees, the faint ache in her muscles, all faded into insignificance, replaced by the profound joy of witnessing her son's first taste of true independence. Liam, still giddy with his accomplishment, looked at his mom, his hero. He saw the pride in her eyes, felt the strength of her embrace, and knew that this wasn't just about learning to ride a bike. It was about learning that with a little courage and a lot of love, anything was possible. And as they walked their way back home, the bike now rolling effortlessly beside him, Liam knew that he'd remember this day and his mom's calloused hands for the rest of his life.